Nanea Chapter 15. Anything for a friend. Time to go, Mom called the next morning. Nanea waggled her finger at Mealy. We're getting fingerprinted. I'll be back soon. Nanea shut Mealy in the bedroom so the dog wouldn't come looking for her again. Then she hurried outside to David's car. Nanea joined Mary Lou in the back seat. I think it's going to be nifty to have an identification card to carry around, kind of like the one I used to have for the Dick Tracy fan club, only more grown up. That's one way to think about it, Monkey. David shifted gears. But I wonder why ID cards are only required here in the territory. You don't have to get an ID card if you live on the mainland? Mary Lou asked. David shook his head. Nope. I'm sure there's a good reason, Mom said. Nanea sighed. During war, it seems especially important to follow the rules. And now there were so many new rules. When to be home, when to turn the lights out, even when to shop. At the processing station, they went to the end of a long line. Nanea was trying to get used to such lines. They were everywhere, at the market, at the bank, at the post office. David found a friend to talk to while Mary Lou took a seat against the wall and pulled out the olive green muffler she was working on. Lately, she'd been so busy knitting that a layer of dust had settled on her record player. While they waited in line, Nanea told Mom about helping Auntie Rose make the camouflage nets. It's an essential job, Nanea said. Mom nodded. There are lots of essential jobs to do these days, Mom said. Really? Nanea was curious. Like what? The Red Cross always needs help rolling bandages, Mom said. Rolling bandages was not Nanea's favorite task. In fact, it was completely boring. What about something Lily and Donna and I could do together? Nanea asked. Something more, active? Mom put her arm around Nanea. I know it's been hard to be cooped up inside so much, Mom said. You and your friends want to get out and do something. I bet you'll think of some way to help the war effort. Before Nanea could say anything else, David joined her and Mom in line. I just found out that 3 more of my friends from McKinley High School signed up, David announced. Then, under his breath, he muttered, I wish I was already 18. Nanea felt her stomach turn over. Donna wasn't the only one Nanea was worried about. It was less than 6 months until David's 18th birthday. Would he wake up on June 5th and enlist? Would he leave Hawaii? Nanea looked at Mom, who was very quiet. Nanea could see the little worry lines on her forehead. David worry lines. Suddenly, the man at the counter was waving them forward. It's our turn, Mary Lou, Mom called. The 4 of them stepped forward. The man behind the desk asked Mom some questions. Then the other members of Nanea's family got fingerprinted. Now I just need your index and middle fingers, the man said to Nanea. He helped her press the fingers of her right hand one at a time to the ink pad and then on the card. Then he repeated the steps with her left hand, and that was it. Here you are, he said a few minutes later when he handed Mom the ID cards. Next. ID cards were not the only requirement for islanders. The military was worried about the Japanese would return and release poisonous gas, so everyone in Hawaii was required to carry a mask. Everywhere. All the time. Even kids. When the masks had first been issued, Nanea had felt like a real soldier for the war effort, but the masks were as heavy as bowling balls, and hot. Luckily, there'd been only one gas drill so far. But a few days later, when Nanea called out that she was going to Lily's house, Mom stopped her. Don't forget your gas mask, Mom said. Nanea groaned. Do I have to take it? Yes, Mom replied. It's the rule. Nanea shifted her mask in her arms this way and that as she headed down the front steps. Donna met her on the sidewalk. She was struggling with her own gas mask. These things are so heavy, Nanea grumbled. And hard to hang on to, Donna added. Nanea couldn't help but giggle as the gas mask slipped in Donna's arms. It looks like you're wrestling with a sea monster. When they got to Lily's, they added their gas mask to the pile at the front hall. Lily's living room was full. All the girls from their class were there, along with some of Tutu's hula students. Nanea had gotten everyone together to talk about ways they could help the war effort. Nanea wanted to pitch in, and she knew there had to be more ways to show that Donna was essential and needed to stay here in Honolulu. We could do a scrap drive, Donna suggested. Uncle Sam needs metal and rubber and paper to make war equipment. Lily giggled. Jeannie's scout troop collected rubber, and some lady gave them 3 old girdles. All the ladies laughed. Even the underwear can help the war effort, Nanea said. Then she cleared her throat to share an idea. Every day, the paper prints notices asking people to donate blood, she said. Blood? Lily paled. Aren't we too young to donate? Yes, we are, Nanea answered, but we're not too young to collect bottles. Lily looked relieved. After the attack, my brother delivered blood from the Red Cross to the hospital, Nanea explained. As fast as he delivered them, the hospital needed more. They still need blood, and guess what? She leaned forward. There's a bottle shortage. She showed them the other articles she'd clipped from the paper, all about the Red Cross pleading for bottles. They're essential, she said, smiling at Donna. So I think that's what we should collect. Different, Donna exclaimed. We'd be the first, said Judy. Let's do it. Lily and McKenna clapped their hands. The girls' voices buzzed as they started making plans. This will be the biggest drive on the island, Lily predicted. Nanea was proud to have thought of it. The next morning, Nanea got up and dressed quietly while Mary Lou snored away. In the kitchen, Mom set 2 empty juice bottles on the counter. I saved these to start you off. Thanks, Nanea polished off her papaya and eggs. Gotta go. Gas mask and bottles in hand, she ran to the meeting spot on the corner. Maylie loped along behind. Donna was already there. A moment later, Lily clattered down the street, pulling Tommy's red wagon. Our first donations, Nanea proudly placed Mom's bottles in the wagon. Mrs. Nicholson smiled when she opened her door. My favorite neighbors, she said. Then she saw their wagon. I'm sorry, I donated newspapers last week. This isn't a paper drive, Nanea said. It's for bottles. Bottles? Well, that's a horse of a different color. Mrs. Nicholson disappeared into her bungalow and returned with 2 bottles. Good luck. Donna knocked at the next house. I'm all out of scrap metal. Mr. Brown shook his head. But we're collecting bottles, Donna said quickly. Mr. Brown scratched his nose. Well, I believe I have a spare. And he did. The third house was Mrs. Lynde's. She added 3 bottles to their collection. And, thanks to her, word began to spread. By lunchtime, the red wagon was full. We should empty this so that the bottles don't break, Nanea suggested. Donna rubbed her middle. I'm starved. They emptied the wagon at Nanea's house, carefully packing the bottles into boxes from Pono's market. Then they devoured the fried bologna sandwiches Mom whipped up. The kittens went out 3 more times after lunch, returning with a full wagon each time. They brought back a last load as David arrived home from work. What's going on here? He asked. Nanea filled him in. And you thought of that? He ruffled Nanea's hair. That blood really saves lives. David looked thoughtful. Do you remember me telling you about Stan? Nanea nodded. That's what gave me the idea. You were my inspiration. David looked surprised. And I am inspired to help you deliver these bottles. Let's get them loaded into my truck. The girls had collected so many bottles that they didn't all fit into David's car. That's okay, David said. We have time for a couple of trips before curfew. At the Red Cross building, David pulled around to the back and honked his horn. 3 Red Cross ladies opened the locking dock doors. One wore a hat and one wore glasses. The third lady had blue-gray hair. Oh my, the hat lady exclaimed when David opened the trunk. You don't know how precious this cargo is, the glasses lady said. More precious than diamonds, the blue-haired lady added. We've had such a bottle shortage. You girls are the answer to our prayers. When the last box of bottles had been carried inside, the Red Cross ladies told the girls that the next step would be sterilizing. Then they'd be filled and put to use, the blue-haired lady explained. We'll be back with more, Nanea promised as they waved goodbye. They sure were impressed, David said as he started the car. Great job, little monkey. That night, as they were getting ready for the blackout, Nanea told her mom what the Red Cross ladies had said. The bottle collection was a good idea, Nanea, Mom said. You're going to help a lot of people. I hope so, Nanea said, thinking, I hope it helps Donna. It seems like what you did today could count towards that Helping Hands contest, Mom said. You definitely helped the community. I guess so, Nanea shrugged. But the deadline for the contest was yesterday. Oh, honey, you missed it, Mom said sadly. I'm sorry. I should have made a note on my calendar. It's okay, Nanea said. And it was. She didn't care much about winning something for herself anymore. Now that she had dipped her paddle in, Nanea wanted to keep helping others. Like Donna. If her plan worked, Donna would get to stay.